Live. Hi, class. This is Professor Wilcox and Professor Levesque, and unfortunately, Professor McCullen cannot join us this morning, or sorry, this evening. It's morning for me here in Taiwan. But we will be going through the Core Concepts exam. Now, one of the important things to remember about the Core Concepts exam is that it uses Proctor Track. So take time and make sure you've done the Proctor Track onboarding. Really, you should have done it in advance at this point. And if you use with Proctor Track, it is not super helpful to write to us because we're not the technical end of that, but there is 24-hour tech support. So if you have trouble with your Proctor Track or with your camera or your microphone, go ahead and give them a call or send them an email. The information is at the top of the course home, and they will be able to get back to you concerning what procedures to follow to get everything up and running. The second important thing about the exam is that even though the homework, you don't want to keep working on that because you don't want to potentially get a worse grade than you may already have. What you can do is you can take the practice exam, which is identical to the homework and identical to the actual exam you'll be taking. Only the questions are random. So go ahead and take the practice exam as many times as you want. Make sure you're good and ready before you take the exam. And remember, you have until the 12th to actually pull the trigger and take the actual exam. So take your time and prepare and be ready before you go. So let's turn it over to Craig. Craig, you have any comments about the exam any advice you have for people?
No, I think you covered it, but I would really want to stress not waiting too long on the Proctor Track. If you wait until the evening of the 12th, it may take Proctor Track 6 hours to fix your problem. And so you really want to have this done in plenty of times, unless, because of the technical issues. And as Stephen said, just, hit that practice test. Hit that practice test as many times as you need to in order to feel comfortable doing the test for real.
Yeah. So how about the rules for taking an exam? Should we cover those? People always ask me, can I have notes? No. You can't have notes. Can you have images on my screen? No. The Proctor Track will show us all that. That's against the rules. It's against the rules to have someone sitting off camera and giving you the answers. And we definitely see that. We've seen that so many times, and it's really unfortunate, and that's worth a lot of your grade. So yeah, that's bad news. You don't want to do that. But what you can do is have scrap paper. That's totally acceptable. You can have scrap paper. You can use a keyboard. The pop-up keyboard will work without disrupting the Proctor Track. We have a special setting that lets us do that. So you can do things like that. Bring some blank paper. Write down as much as you want. Don't feel shy about doing that. But remember, we don't want to see you with a notebook full of your full of answers, and we don't want to watch you surfing around the internet looking for answers, because we definitely see that. But without delay, maybe we should just dig in and cover what's in the practice exam.
Sure thing. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to screen share, and we'll go right through the first page pretty quickly.
Yeah, the first page you need to go through the first page quickly. In fact, you want to give yourself the most time for the third page. I'm going to mute me here.
Okay. So am I good to go? Excellent. So the first page is pitch identification. This is going to be the page that hopefully you feel the most comfortable with. So this is a great example right off the bat. We have an F flat. Every once in a while, somebody will get clever and try and write that as an E. Remember that you want to be really explicit about these and write it exactly as it's written and not use enharmonics. So the first page is simply note identification. Single case lower letters for for the natural notes, and then follow direction for flat and sharp after that. And if I scroll down, these are all things that hopefully you are very comfortable doing. Be careful with the legend lines. This would be a low G, for example. Sometimes students have a tendency to miscount legend lines, or they only count the line and not the space. So every once in a while you'll get somebody that says, oh, C, B, A. Remember the spaces count as well. Bass clef and treble clef. Okay, so I think, sorry, I'm scrolling fast. Steven, is there anything you want to add about these particular set of assignments? I really think they should be pretty easy for us by this point.
They should be pretty easy. They're all things you've done. Watch the atop assigns and marking things on the keyboard. But again, these are all things that at this point you should have mastered pretty comfortably. So I believe there's 20 on this first page. And you really want to rocket through these as quickly as you can.
So with the keyboard ones, the only thing I guess I'd remind you also is just to remember where middle C is. And it's marked with the green key on the keyboard. But please remember where middle C is, because that will help you get the octave correct in these questions where you have to put the number down to designate the key. Okay, so why don't we flip to page 2. Would you like to take page 2, or do you want me to continue? Okay, let me keep going here. So page 2, beat divisions in time signatures. This is definitely harder than the first page because rhythm is harder than note naming, as we all discovered. So the first question, the first batch, in simple meter, if the beat was an eighth note, the beat would be divided evenly into the following. This requires that you remember that simple meter is divisions of 2 versus compound, which is divisions of 3. And just remember when you're doing these that the more flags you have or the more stems you have, the shorter the note is. And so half of a note with 1 flag would be 2 notes with 2 flags. Half a note with 2 flags half of 1 note with 2 flags would be a note with 3 flags. Compound quadruple. Again, you have to know that compound means beats divided by 3. And then you have to know that quadruple means 4 beats in a measure. So the answer for this one would be 4 beats which divide in 3. Here's the same kind of question reverse. 4 beats per measure with 3 divisions each beat. It's actually the same compound quadruple. The 4 beats per measure tells you compound. Tells you quadruple. 3 beats per measure is what tells you compound. Simple meter, again, let's find a compound meter one if we can. Another simple meter. Well, we'll do this one because it's a big number. In simple meter, if the beat was a whole note, the beat would be divided evenly into which of the following? 1 whole note would be divided in a simple meter into 2 half notes. Let's see. Meter questions. Which meter has 4 beats per measure with beat durations of a dotted eighth note? So whenever you have a dot on top of what gets the beat, just remember that's going to be a compound meter. And so we want to look at which one of these potential answers is going to have 4 dotted eighth notes in every measure. Now let's eliminate 4-4 and 4-2 right on the back. Those are simple meters. And we can eliminate 4-8 because that's also a simple meter. And we know that this can be a compound meter because there's a dot there. All compound meters have 6, 9, or 12 on the top. 4 beats per measure. So I know it's either going to be 12-4, 12-8, or 12-16. Then it's almost just a matter of counting. If I have 4 of these, does that give me 12 eighth notes, 12 quarter notes, or 12 16th notes? Since this divides into 3 16th notes and there's 4, I would then come to the answer of 12-16. So to go over that one again, I had to know that this dotted note meant it was compound and that the 4 beats per measure meant it was one of these 12 ones. And then it was simply a matter of figuring out that this was 3 16th notes and multiplying that 3 16th notes by the 4 to get 12-16. Other than that, these are, again, pretty straightforward. They mirror the questions you would have received on the homeworks. Just be careful on a compound time. For instance, this one, 9-4, which note value receives the beat. You may intrinsically think, oh, 9/4, that means the quarter note gets the beat. Just remember that in compound time, the bottom number does not get the beat, but 3 of the bottom number form to get 1 beat. So in this case, it would be a dotted half note because we have 9 quarters in a measure, and 9 quarters grouped into 3 groups of 3 would by necessity give you a dotted half note. So do be careful of that. Of course, the exception of that is 3/8, in which case you would have the 8th note getting the beat. I think that's most of the questions you're going to see on the second page. Again, just keep an eye on simple and compound, and make sure that you're not automatically assuming that the bottom number gets the beat in a compound meter.
Okay, we're sort of rocketing through this, but don't forget that we can still take questions. So if there's some specific issue you have with the assignments that are getting covered in this exam, don't be shy about giving us a poke. Why don't I take let's have it up. I don't have it up. Hold on. Exam. Okay, here we go. This one. Okay, so let's see. Here we're giving you the pitch, and the first top half of the page will be major scales. The bottom half of the page will be minor. So the first thing you want to do, or what you're looking to do, is find the harmonic function of the pitch we've given you in the key. So the first thing you want to do is figure out what the key is. So this revolves around your knowledge of key signatures. Now remember, when we deal in flat key signatures, we're looking at the second to last flat. So not G flat, but D flat. So this is D flat major. And we are, now that we have the D flat as the tonic note, we're going to essentially count up to the note we've given you. So if D flat is the tonic note, we're looking at E flat, which is the second note above the tonic, so that would be the supertonic. So the answer there would be supertonic. Let's go down to get a different key. Here, all right, here's a sharp key. And remember, with the sharp keys, you want to do what the last sharp is the leading tone of the key you're in. So if we have an E sharp, then we're in F sharp major. So if F sharp is our tonic, then we count up 1 to G, and this is also supertonic. Let's try this one. Here we have 3 sharps. The last one is G sharp, so that would be the leading tone, the 7th scale degree in the key. And so if G sharp is the leading tone, then we have an A. So here, if we have an A, we can also count down. A would be tonic, G sharp would be the leading tone, F sharp would be the submediant, E would be the dominant, and D would be the subdominant. So that would be the subdominant.
If I could just jump in for one quick second.
Sure.
If you remember the chart that was up at the top of the page, you'll remember that it has both the subtonic and the leading tone. Make sure that you don't count the subtonic in major. When Stephen was just counting down, he went leading tone, submediant, dominant, because the subtonic only occurs in minor when you have the unaltered 7th. So make sure you don't count that as 6 if you're counting down, or 7 if you're counting up, and that you remember that subtonic is in place of leading tone sometimes in minor.
Yeah, that's actually a good little edit that maybe I'll go through before the exam. Well, I guess the exam has already opened, hasn't it? But maybe I'll go through and mark that down, because I'm sure it'll help someone. Okay, let's go back here, and hopefully everyone is comfortable with major. Major is frankly the easier of the two. And this is where you're going to want to spend the majority of your time. But really, it's just a matter of the key signatures. If you have the key signatures down, you're pretty set. So let's look at a minor one, and we'll start with an easy one. Here, what we have is, in major, this would be F. And remember, the relative minor, the minor with all the same notes, is built on the submediant, the 6th scale degree. So what I like to do is I like to say, well, that's F. I can see F. So I go F, E, D, submediant, right? So this would be D minor, and we have a D. So this would be tonic. So I'd put tonic in there. Here we have that same key signature we saw before for A major, but we're looking for the submediant, so you can figure out the minor. So if this would be A major, A, G sharp, F sharp. And notice it's in the key signature, right? F sharp. So this would be F sharp minor. So we're looking at an A and F sharp minor. So F sharp, G sharp, A, median. This would be the median in the minor key. Let's find one with a sub. All right, here's a good one. What would be our key here? Well, second to last flat would give us the major key. So this would be B flat major. And then we count down. B flat would be the tonic, but we're looking for the submediant to figure out where the relative major is built. So B flat, A, G. This would be G minor. So in G minor, what is an F sharp in G minor? Well, if we count down G, F, it's either the subtonic or the leading tone. And now remember, the leading tone is that raised 7th scale degree, right? So since this is an F sharp, this would be our leading tone. If it was just an F, it would be the subtonic. Do you have any more interesting ones on your end? I'm only without reloading everything. I'm gonna show. I'm trying to look for one with a. Here, let's do this one, and then I'll see if Craig has some interesting ones. Because as I said, these are random. So what we have to show you is also random. Here, if we look, as I say, I like to look for the major first. So this would be G flat major, second to last. And then I'm going to count down the median of G flat major to find the relative minor, which is what we're looking for. So G flat, F, E flat. So this is E flat minor. What would C natural be? So E, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. So this would be the submediant. Now, even though this is a natural, that just means it's a raised submediant, but it still keeps the name submediant. So you want to watch those accidentals. If you see a natural in a key with flats, or if you see a sharp in a key with flats, you're probably dealing with either, well, the sharp will probably indicate a leading tone, but the natural probably indicates a submediant. But you just want to watch those. So because if you have an accidental, you're dealing with either those raised 6th and 7th scale degrees, or putting the 6th and 7th scale degree back the way it was. So you just want to pay attention to that. Do you have anything good on your end, Craig?
Yeah, I've got a couple minor ones. And when you say interesting, really what you mean is minor with accidentals.
Yeah.
Let me switch over here. Okay, so this is a pretty good one. So we have one flat. We know that one flat is F major. The relative minor in F major is D minor. That's actually when we had on the other one. So if we count up, we have B being the 6th scale degree, which is again our submediant. And just to reiterate something Stephen just said, if you see any accidentals at all, then you can put your money on 6 or 7 in the minor mode. That's, at least at this point in time, that is the only place you can see accidentals. This is kind of a nice one, a minor key. It's only nice because there's a lot of legend lines. Again, we have the major key of A major. We know that because the last sharp is G sharp, and upper half step would be A. The 6th scale degree, the relative minor, is F sharp. So we have F sharp as our relative minor. Kind of hard to find this because I'm going to think starting F sharp here, I can count down on tonic subtonic, I suppose, submediant, dominant, subdominant, mediant, supertonic to get all the way to the G sharp down below, which is the second scale degree. This is kind of a nice one because it's a double sharp, and double sharps make me happy. Don't know why, they just do. So we have a minor key signature. The major key signature would be C sharp minor. I'm sorry, the major key signature would be C sharp major. I know that because the last sharp is a B sharp, and half step up of B sharp is C sharp. The relative minor then to C sharp is A sharp, because that is the sixth scale degree. F double sharp would be the raised sixth scale degree of that, making this another example of the submediant. I think those are the only interesting ones that I really have. The others are pretty straightforward.
But I do see that. The leading tone C minor there.
Well,
on yours.
Let me get that back up. Okay. Yes. I've lost it. Had it. There it is. Okay, so on the minor key signature, the harmonic function of the given note. So we have E flat major. We go to the second to last flat. That's an E flat. So we know this is E flat major. The relative minor of E flat major, the sixth step of the E flat scale, is a C, making this C minor. The B natural would then be the leading tone, the seventh step that is raised of the C minor scale. Now earlier Stephen said that naturals are often the sixth scale degrees, while sharp are often the seventh. The more flats you add, the more likely it is that you're going to have a natural instead of a sharp to raise those things up. And the more sharps you have, like example 17 on my sheet, the more it opens up the possibility of having a double sharp to raise up that leading tone to that sixth scale degree. So just keep in mind that whether or not it's a sharp, a natural, or even a double sharp really depends on what's already in the key signature.
So learning how to read the key signatures effectively seems to be the critical aspect here. Would you agree, Craig?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're going quick through moving between relatives and the relative major and the relative minor, and hopefully that's not too quick. But you can't really do this exercise, and you can't do this part of the test unless you can correctly identify these key signatures. And just keep remembering all the small little tips we've shared before. For instance, the name of the key has to agree with the key signature. Stephen mentioned earlier, there's an F sharp in the key signature, and that's our starting note for F sharp minor. So just remember all of the things we've talked about with identifying key signatures properly when you're going to identify these, because without identifying the key signature correctly, you don't have really a chance of getting the harmonic function correct.
And the key to identifying the key signatures, besides knowing the rule, is being able to identify the pitches quickly. So if you're still counting up lines and spaces from the G line or from the F line and bass clef, then this becomes a lot more complicated, and you're working a lot more slowly than you're probably going to want to work to really give this test the time it needs. So spend some time in the practice exam. Try to identify your deficiencies. Try to identify questions that you're not getting right, and ask questions about the exams, because even though the exam's open, we're perfectly willing to answer questions that you have about what you're finding while you practice for it.
And if there's one thing in this class that you should take the time to memorize, it should be number of sharps associated with keys.
Yeah.
If you ask any professional musician, what's 5 sharps, they'll be able to tell you B major or G sharp minor. It's only 24 things to memorize. But if you can sit down at this test and know that 3 flats is E flat major and C minor because you've memorized that in the list, even if you're really terrible at knowing that that's a B flat, that's an E flat, that's an A flat, the fact that there are 3 of them tells you that it's either E flat major or C minor.
Right.
So remember that the numbers are completely consistent and fixed. 3 flats will always be E flat major or C minor. So again, if there's one thing you can memorize, I would suggest that being the one.
Yeah, they always come in the same order. So there's never, you never have to peer over any particular key signature to try to guess, well, in this particular version of the key signature, the second is E flat, and the next time it's F flat, and the next time it's A flat. You know, it doesn't work that way.
I guarantee half of the people taking this test are engineers or engineering majors or chemistry majors or pharmacy majors or something, and the scary amount of things you guys memorize and have to memorize in your own majors must make this seem very simple by comparison. So if you can memorize whatever it is you have to memorize for your own degree, and I'm showing my ignorance in what goes into those other degrees, then you can memorize this as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. So is there anything else we want to suggest before we wrap it up, besides practice and ask questions?
Ask questions. Take the practice test. Whatever you got wrong, if you weren't sure, ask questions about it.
Okay, we're getting a question here from Sharon, which is good. And it's nice to maybe wrap up with the end of this with some of the things we mentioned at the beginning. You are absolutely allowed to use scrap paper. We don't want you using your, a notebook full of notes. This is not an open book exam, and you can't look online for answers. That is something that will be detected, and we'll have to. There's just no way of getting around it. We have to ding you on that. We'll have to turn it in for an academic integrity thing. As much as we maybe prefer not to have to deal with that stuff. But you are allowed to bring scrap paper. You are allowed to draw a circle of fists. You're allowed to start the exam up and dump your brain out on a piece of paper. That's not a problem. We understand that's totally a function of what you want to do in a music class. You want to write things down and give yourself little memory cues. You can also use the piano, the pop-up piano built in. That will not trigger any issues. So go ahead and do that. And remember, use the practice exam. That's why it's there. Anything else, Craig?
No, I mean, that's really it. Everybody really, I think, should do great on this test if they take the time with the practice exam and ask questions. I really think that everyone has a good chance to do really, really well on this.
Yeah,
just take the time.
As I said, it's kind of some of the core skills, being able to identify the difference between compound and simple, because that's essentially what we've given you, identifying the key signatures as they relate to compound and simple, being able to just identify notes on the keyboard, and being able to identify harmonic functions. And that might seem complicated, but if you can nail that skill, Chapter 5, or Unit 5 and Unit 6 will be much, much, much easier for you. And if you don't master that skill, then they're going to seem like confusing craziness. They're just not going to make a lot of sense to you. You're going to think that there's some sort of trick that you just missed, and the trick is, memorizing the key signatures and figuring out how this process works. So that's our advice to you, and hopefully you'll all be ready to go. Anything from Craig before?
No.
All right.
No, I think that covers everything.
Nice and quick today. Well,
we don't want to hold people.
Huh?
We don't want to hold people up on an exciting Friday night.
Oh yeah, seriously. I can't believe we have anybody watching. That's great. And we appreciate your viewership. I know if you like our podcast, please recommend our podcast.
Read it on iTunes. Those reviews really help.
Those reviews really help. Some of us have been listening to 538 podcasts all night. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Good night.